When I saw the bank notification on my phone, I felt the floor disappear beneath my feet. $35,000 charged from Dubai on my card. I was in my kitchen eating stale bread to save money on dinner, while my son Michael was enjoying champagne in a luxury pool with his in-laws, mocking me. Before we continue, subscribe and hit the notification bell, because we publish new stories every day. Leave your like, and tell us in the comments what city and country you're watching from. My name is David Miller. I'm 65 years old, and I've been a widower for 7 years. My wife Sarah died in 2017 after a battle with cancer that left us emotionally and financially devastated. Since then, I've lived on my retirement pension, $1,120 a month, which I manage with extreme care. Every penny counts when you live alone with no help from anyone. It was a Tuesday, March 15th, 2024, around 4 inches the afternoon. I was sitting in my small kitchen with a cup of watery coffee and a piece of day-old bread spread with cheap margarine. This had been my routine for months. Cut expenses to the absolute minimum, buy only the essentials at the cheapest grocery store, walk instead of taking the bus. I didn't complain. I had learned to live with less, to find dignity and simplicity. My cell phone buzzed with that specific vibration that announces an important message. It was a notification from my bank. Unusual transaction alert. Contact us immediately. My heart skipped a beat. In all my years, I had never received anything like that. With trembling hands, I dialed the number on the screen. The voice on the other end was professional, but urgent. Mr. Miller, this is Caroline Moore from the Chase Bank Security Department. We need to verify a series of charges made to your credit card in the last 24 hours. Are you currently in Dubai? United Arab Emirates? Dubai. The name echoed in my head like a distant sound. No, I'm in my house in Chicago. What charges? What are you talking about? There was a brief pause before Caroline continued in a more serious voice. Mr. Miller, multiple transactions have been made since yesterday afternoon. The total amount comes to $35,240. The charges include 4 first-class plane tickets with Emirates Airlines, a reservation at the Burj Al Arab Hotel for 8 nights, and various additional services at luxury restaurants and spas. I felt the room spinning around me. $35,000. That amount represented almost 3 full years of my pension. All my savings, carefully guarded for medical emergencies, had been my only safety net since Sarah's death. That's impossible. I haven't authorized any of that. My card is right here with me. I checked my wallet with clumsy fingers. The credit card was there, in its usual spot. But then I remembered something that froze my blood. 3 months ago, my son Michael had come to visit. It was one of those strange visits that had become rarer and rarer since his marriage to Nicole Sanders Price, 4 years ago. That day in December, Michael had been unusually kind and concerned. Dad, at your age, you should have someone you trust with access to your bank information just in case something happens to you. Just let me write down your card numbers, in case there's a medical emergency and I need to help you quickly. His argument had sounded so reasonable, so full of genuine care, like an idiot. I gave him the 16 digits of my credit card, the expiration date, and even the security code. It's just a precaution, Dad. I'll never use it unless it's absolutely necessary. I promise. His words now echoed in my memory with a completely different tone, stained with the bitterest betrayal. Mr. Miller, are you still there? Caroline's voice brought me back to the present. We need to proceed immediately. Do you recognize these transactions? Or should we consider them fraudulent? My mind was racing, connecting the pieces of a gruesome puzzle. Michael had my card details. Michael, who in recent years had grown more and more distant, visiting me only on Christmas and my birthday, and always in a hurry. Michael, who now spent every weekend with his in-laws, Mark Sanders and Linda Price, posting photos on social media of dinners at restaurants where I couldn't even afford the appetizers. Give me a moment, please, I asked Caroline, as I opened the WhatsApp application with shaking hands. I looked for the last conversation with my son. The last message was from Sunday, 2 days ago. Dad, I'll be out of town for a few days for work. I'll call you when I get back. Nothing unusual. Nothing to suggest he was about to steal the equivalent of 3 years of my life. But then, I saw his WhatsApp status, updated just 2 hours ago. When I opened it, the world stopped completely. It was a photograph taken from a spectacular infinity pool, with the Dubai skyline shining in the background under the desert sun. In the center of the image was Michael, tanned and smiling, with a glass of champagne in his hand. Beside him, Mark and Linda Sanders posed with expressions of absolute satisfaction, also with sparkling glasses. All three wore luxurious bathrobes with the Burj Al Arab Hotel logo embroidered on them. But what completely destroyed me was the text over the photo. They deserve a vacation. You don't. Those 5 words contained more cruelty than any direct insult. My own son, the person I had carried in my arms as a baby, the one whose college education I had paid for by working double shifts at the factory, the one who had cried on my shoulder when his mother died. That same son had stolen from me, and then mocked me for it. Mr. Miller, Caroline's voice interrupted my shock. I need your answer. Are these authorized transactions? I looked at the photo again, Michael raising his glass to the camera, his in-laws laughing, the obscene luxury of that hotel that cost thousands of dollars a night, and me, sitting in my kitchen with stale bread and cheap margarine, trying to stretch every dollar of my miserable pension. Something inside me broke in that moment. It wasn't immediate rage. It was something colder, more final. It was the death of any illusion I had held on to about my relationship with my son. No, my voice sounded strangely calm. Those transactions are not authorized. They are fraudulent, and I know exactly who made them. Caroline kept me on the line while she processed the fraud report. Every second felt like an eternity. As I listened to the typing on her computer, my brain began to trace the path that had brought me to this moment of absolute betrayal. Michael was born in 1986, when Sarah and I were barely 25. It was a difficult pregnancy, with complications that required complete bed rest for 6 months. I worked 12 hours a day at the Hernandez and Sons textile factory to cover the additional medical expenses. I remember perfectly how I came home exhausted every night, but I always found the energy to massage Sarah's swollen feet and talk to her belly about the dreams we had for our son. When Michael finally arrived on August 27th, weighing just 5.5 pounds, he spent 3 weeks in an incubator. The hospital bills piled up, but I never hesitated to pay every cent. He was my son. I would make any sacrifice necessary. During his childhood, Michael was a bright and loving boy. He got excellent grades without apparent effort. Teachers always commented on his natural intelligence and his ability to solve complex problems. Sarah and I were proud. We dreamed he would go to college, something neither of us had been able to do. But college was expensive. Incredibly expensive. When Michael was accepted into the University of Chicago to study business administration in 2004, the annual cost was $6,000 for tuition, books, and transportation. My salary at the factory was barely enough to keep the household running. So I did what any father would do. I got a second job for 4 years. I worked at the factory from 6 inches the morning until 2 inches the afternoon, and then as a night security guard at a shopping mall from 8 at night until midnight. I slept in fragments. I ate poorly. I aged 10 years and 4. But Michael graduated with honors in 2008. The day of his graduation, when I saw him in his cap and gown, I felt that every lost hour of sleep had been worth it. Sarah prepared a special dinner that night with her secret savings. Roast chicken, potatoes, her famous custard. Michael hugged us both, crying with happiness, promising that he would repay us for every sacrifice, that he would take care of us when we were older. You are the best parents in the world. I will never forget what you've done for me. Promises are easy when you're young, and the future shines with infinite possibilities. Michael got a job at a business consulting firm 3 months after graduating. His starting salary was $1,800 a month, a fortune compared to what I earned after 30 years at the factory. I was so proud of him. He started visiting us every Sunday for lunch, always bringing a small gift: wine, sweets, flowers for his mother. Everything changed when he met Nicole in 2019 during a business conference in Seattle. She worked in marketing for a major firm. She came from a wealthy family from the Gold Coast in Chicago. Her parents, Mark and Linda, owned 3 luxury car dealerships. They lived in a 2,000 square foot apartment worth over $1 million. The first time Michael told us about Nicole, I noticed a change in his tone. It wasn't my son talking about a girl he liked anymore. It was someone impressed, almost intimidated by the world she belonged to. Her family has important connections, Dad. Nicole's father knows half of Chicago. This could be very good for my career. When we finally met the Sanders family at a formal dinner at their house a month later, I understood that we had lost our son. The house was a museum of wealth, original paintings on the walls, furniture that cost more than our entire apartment, a wine cellar that Mark bragged was worth over $50,000. During that dinner, Linda asked me what I did for a living. When I explained that I worked in a textile factory, her expression changed subtly. She didn't say anything rude, but the way she exchanged glances with her husband said it all. Their daughter was dating someone from a lower class. Michael married Nicole in July 2020. The wedding was at the Drake Hotel, paid for entirely by the Sanders. When Mark announced during the toast that they had spent $80,000 on the celebration, I felt a mix of awe and sadness. We had offered to contribute $5,000 from our savings. But Mark refused the offer with a condescending smile. Don't worry about it. This is the least we can do for our princess. After the marriage, Michael's visits became sporadic. First, he stopped coming every Sunday, then every 2 weeks, then only on special occasions. He always had excuses: work meetings, social commitments with the Sanders, weekend trips. Sarah noticed, but she didn't say anything. I saw her cry silently several times when another Sunday passed without our son showing up. Give him time, David. He's building his life, in his marriage. It's normal for him to see us less. But I knew it was something more. It wasn't just time or physical distance. It was an emotional distance, a silent rewriting of who was important in his life. When Sarah got sick in 2016, Michael came to the hospital 3 times in 8 months. 3 times. His mother was dying, and he was too busy with his business dinners and his weekend getaways with the Sanders. I vividly remember a phone conversation 2 weeks before Sarah passed away. Son, your mother asks for you every day. The doctors say she only has a few weeks left. Could you come tomorrow? There was a long pause. Dad, you know I want to be there. But Mark organized an important meeting with potential investors. It's crucial for my promotion. I'll come on the weekend, I promise. He didn't come that weekend. He arrived 2 days after the funeral, with Nicole and his in-laws. During the wake, I heard Linda comment to a friend, "What a shame, so young. But, well, at least now Michael can concentrate completely on his future without these worries." Worries. That's what she called my wife's death. After the burial, Michael hugged me briefly. "I'm sorry, Dad, I know I wasn't around as much as I should have been, but I'll be more present now, I promise." Another empty promise that vanished, like smoke. In the following 3 years, I saw him maybe 15 times, always short, hurried visits, with Nicole waiting impatiently in the car. Meanwhile, his social media showed a completely different life. Weekly dinners at the Sanders house, vacations in the Hamptons with them, Christmas celebrations in their professionally decorated mansion. 6 months ago, in September 2023, I saw a post that broke my heart. It was Mark's birthday. Michael had written, "Happy birthday to the best father-in-law and second dad anyone could wish for. Thank you for teaching me so much about success and family." Second dad, as if I had been replaced. And now this. Now he had literally robbed me, spending in 8 days of luxury what I had saved through years of sacrifice. Spending it on the very people who had pulled him away from me, the people who had turned him into someone capable of writing. They deserve a vacation. You don't, over the picture of his betrayal. Mr. Miller, Caroline spoke again. "I have temporarily blocked your card and initiated a fraud investigation. Do you wish to file a formal complaint against the person responsible?" I looked at the photograph on my phone again. My son toasting with champagne while I chewed stale bread. "Yes." My voice was pure ice. "I want to file a formal complaint, and I want every dollar back." After hanging up with Caroline, I sat in the kitchen for almost an hour, staring at that photograph on my phone. Every detail burned me. The arrogant smiles, the blatant luxury, the explicit mockery. But I needed to understand exactly what my son had done with my money before deciding my next steps. I opened my banking app with trembling fingers. The transaction page took a few seconds to load, and when it did, I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. There it was, line after line of transactions, documenting the betrayal with brutal precision. 4 first-class tickets from Chicago to Dubai. He hadn't even had the decency to fly economy. No, my money had to fund seats that turned into fully flat beds, unlimited Moet and Chandon champagne, and menus designed by Michelin-starred chefs. March 15th, 1:17 p.m. Burj Al Arab Hotel. Pimtheg, dim dollars. Full reservation for 8 nights. I quickly looked up that hotel on my old computer. The cheapest room cost $1,200 a night. $1,200. That was more than my entire monthly pension. And Michael had booked something even more expensive. Probably a suite with panoramic views of the Persian Gulf and 24-hour butler service. Then came the additional purchases and services, each one a knife in my back. March 15th, 2 p.m. Nathan Outlaw at Al Mahara Restaurant, $2,400. I looked up the place, an underwater restaurant inside the hotel where they served lobster and caviar while sharks swam past the glass. A single meal cost more than 2 months of my food budget. March 16th, 10 a.m. Talise Spa, $3,500. Luxury treatments for 4 people, hot stone massages, 24-karat gold body wraps, caviar facials. While they were being slathered with products that cost more than my rent, I was scrubbing my dishes with the same worn-out sponge I'd been using for 6 months because buying a new one seemed like an unnecessary expense. March 16th, 7 p.m., Pirchik Restaurant, $1,900. Another extravagant dinner, this time at a restaurant built on stilts, over the sea. March 17th, 11 a.m., Dubai Mall, Gucci, $2,800. Of course, the initial theft wasn't enough. Now they were buying designer clothes with my money too. I imagined Linda picking out a handbag that cost the same as what I spent on food for half a year. March 17th, 4 p.m. Aquaventure Water Park, $400. VIP tickets for the most famous water park in Dubai. They couldn't even settle for regular tickets. March 18th, 8 p.m. Gold on 27 Restaurant, $2,100. Another feast, while I was calculating if I could afford to buy fresh fruit that week. The list went on. Luxury desert safari, $800. Shopping at the Gold Souk, and $500. Private excursion to Abu Dhabi, $900. Each transaction was a declaration that my life, my well-being, my future, meant absolutely nothing to him. The exact total was $35,240, a figure so specific that I burned it into my memory, like a tattoo on my brain. That amount represented much more than money. It was the result of 3 years of extreme deprivation after Sarah's death, 3 years of always buying the cheapest brands at the supermarket, 3 years of not turning on the heat until the cold ached in my bones, 3 years of not buying new clothes, darning torn socks, and wearing the same coat I'd had since 2010. 3 years of turning down invitations from old factory colleagues for a beer because every dollar counted. And what was all that sacrifice for? So my son could finance a luxury vacation to impress his in-laws. so Mark and Linda could brag to their rich friends about the attentive son-in-law who took them to seven-star hotels. I looked at the photograph again. This time I forced myself to analyze it in more detail, looking for any element I could use later. Michael was wearing new Ray-Ban sunglasses, probably bought with my money. His swim trunks had a visible Versace logo. The hotel bathrobes were immaculate white, with the distinctive gold logo of the Burj Al Arab embroidered on the chest. Mark held his champagne glass with that expression of superiority he had perfected over the years. Linda smiled widely, her professionally whitened teeth gleaming in the desert sun. Both had perfect tans, undoubtedly the kind you get in high-end tanning beds before the trip, so you don't arrive pale in Dubai. But it was Nicole who finally captured my attention. She was slightly out of the main frame, but visible, and on her face I saw something the others didn't show. Discomfort. Her eyes were looking away. Her smile seemed forced. It was a subtle expression, but after decades of observing people at my job, I had learned to read body language. Did she know this trip was being financed with stolen money? Had Michael lied to her, saying I had given permission? Or did she simply not care where the money came from, as long as she could enjoy the luxury? My phone vibrated with a message. It was Michael. My pulse quickened as I opened the conversation. "Dad, I tried calling you, but you're not answering. Everything okay over there? I'll call you when I get back next week. Hugs." Next week. He planned to continue enjoying my money for 5 more days before even bothering to talk to me. And the casual question, "Everything okay over there?" was the icing on the cake. As if he actually cared about my well-being after robbing me and publicly humiliating me. My fingers moved over the keyboard almost of their own free will. I wrote and deleted 3 different responses. The first was a scream of rage and pain. The second was a pathetic plea, asking why he had done this to me. The third was a direct threat of legal action. But in the end, I sent none of them. Something inside me, perhaps the last shred of dignity I had left, told me not to show my cards yet. If Michael thought I knew nothing, if he believed he could return calmly and face only an uncomfortable conversation about a misunderstanding with the card, then he was gravely mistaken. Instead of responding, I put the phone away and opened my computer. I Googled Family Fraud Lawyer Chicago. Dozens of results appeared. I read reviews for 2 hours, taking careful notes on each firm that seemed competent and experienced. While researching, I discovered something that filled me with a cold satisfaction. In Illinois, the unauthorized use of a credit card, even by a family member, constitutes the crime of fraud or misappropriation. The penalties could range from hefty fines to prison, depending on the amount stolen. $35,000 definitely qualified as a significant sum. I also learned that I had the right to file a criminal complaint regardless of him being my son. The prosecutor's office could proceed even if I later wanted to drop the charges. This information gave me a sense of power I hadn't felt since I saw that first bank notification. I found the name of a lawyer who seemed perfect. Robert Evans Moore, specialized in criminal and civil law with over 20 years of experience. His website showed successful cases of family fraud, asset recovery, and out-of-court settlements. Reviews from previous clients were excellent, describing him as meticulous, strategic, and compassionate with victims. I called his office immediately. A friendly receptionist informed me that Robert could see me the next day, Wednesday, March 19th, at 10 inches the morning. I accepted without hesitation. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that photograph. Every time I started to drift off, I heard the words, "They deserve a vacation." You don't. But something had fundamentally changed in me. It wasn't just pain or betrayal I felt anymore. It was determination. My son had made a terrible mistake in underestimating me. He had assumed that his father, old and poor, would simply accept this humiliation, too weak or too scared to act. He was about to find out just how wrong he was. On Wednesday, March 19th, I woke up at 6 inches the morning, although I had really been awake since 4. Anxiety had kept me in a restless half-sleep all night. I showered with lukewarm water to save on the gas bill. I shaved carefully in front of the fogged bathroom mirror and put on my only decent suit, a navy blue suit I had bought in 2012 for Michael's wedding. The suit was slightly loose on me now. I had lost weight in recent years without really noticing. The combination of eating less to save money and the constant stress of living on a minimal pension had thinned my body until I was almost gaunt. Sarah would have worried seeing me like this. I left the house at 9. Even though Robert Evans's office was only a 20-minute walk away, I needed time to organize my thoughts, to make sure I didn't forget any important details. I carried a folder where I had printed all the bank statements, screenshots of the conversation with Michael, and the Dubai photograph. I had also handwritten a detailed timeline of events. The office was located on Michigan Avenue, in an elegant but not flashy building. I took the elevator to the 3rd floor, where a gold plaque announced Evans and Associates, attorneys at law. The reception was sober, cream-colored walls, dark wood furniture, framed diplomas attesting to the firm's experience. The receptionist, a woman in her 42nds named Patricia, according to her name tag, greeted me with a professional smile. "Good morning, Mr. Miller. Mr. Evans is waiting for you. Please, follow me." Robert Evans was a man of about 55, perfectly combed gray hair, thin-rimmed glasses, and a suit that probably cost more than all my furniture combined. But when he shook my hand, his grip was firm and warm. His brown eyes showed genuine empathy. "Mr. Miller, please sit down. Patricia briefly mentioned your situation on the phone. Credit card fraud committed by a close relative. I'm very sorry you're going through this." His voice was steady, reassuring. "Tell me in detail what happened." For the next hour, I told him the whole story. I omitted nothing. I told him about how I had raised Michael, the financial sacrifices to pay for his education, the growing distance after his marriage to Nicole, how I had trusted him with my card details, believing his word. I showed him every document, every screenshot, every detailed transaction. Robert took meticulous notes on his laptop, occasionally asking specific questions. "Did you give him the card details in writing or verbally? Is there any record of the conversation where he promised to use it only for emergencies? Has Michael tried to contact you from Dubai?" When I got to the part about the photograph with the message, "They deserve a vacation, and you don't," Robert stopped typing and looked at me directly. "Mr. Miller, that constitutes not only an implicit admission of unauthorized use, but also evidence of malicious intent. It is a very valuable element for the case," he continued, explaining the legal situation clearly. "We are looking at a crime of aggravated fraud through breach of trust. The Illinois statutes establish prison sentences of 1 to 6 years for this type of case. Since the amount exceeds, it's $35,000. But it's still a significant amount. The aggravating circumstances include the relationship and the deliberate abuse of trust." I leaned back in the chair, processing the information. Prison. My son could go to prison for what he had done to me. A part of me felt a dark satisfaction at that possibility. Another part, the one that still remembered the boy he had been, shrank painfully. Robert sensed my internal conflict. "Mr. Miller, I understand this is extremely difficult. He is your son, but I need you to understand something fundamental. What Michael has done is not just a mistake or a bad decision. It is a serious crime. And the message he sent shows that not only does he feel no remorse, but he also feels justified in publicly humiliating you." He was right, completely. "What are my options?" I asked in a hoarse voice. Robert adjusted his glasses. "We have 2 main paths. The first is the criminal route. We file a complaint with the Chicago Police Department. The case goes to the district attorney, and they decide whether or not to prosecute, if the case proceeds. Your son would face a criminal trial with possible prison time, in addition to the obligation to return the money. This process can take between 1 and 2 years. He paused before continuing. "The second option is faster, but it requires your son to cooperate. A civil lawsuit combined with a formal demand letter, demanding the immediate return of the money. If he agrees, we can establish a payment agreement with legal guarantees, if he refuses or fails to comply. Then we proceed with the criminal route, already having all the documentation prepared. "Which do you recommend?" I asked. Robert leaned forward, his fingers interlaced on the desk. "Frankly, Mr. Miller, I recommend starting with the demand letter, for two reasons. First, it's faster to recover your money, which I understand is crucial given your financial situation. Second, it gives your son a chance to make it right before facing criminal consequences. If he refuses or ignores the notice, then we will have additional evidence of his contempt for your rights, which will greatly strengthen the criminal case." The logic was flawless. "How much would your services cost?" I dreaded the answer. Competent lawyers weren't cheap, and I barely had enough money to survive the month. My usual retainer would be $3,000 up front, plus a percentage of the amount recovered. He saw my expression and raised a hand. "However, in cases like yours, where there is clear family abuse and financial limitations, I work with a different system. I will charge you an initial $1,000, which you can pay in 3 monthly installments, and 10% of the total amount recovered. If we recover nothing, which is highly unlikely given the evidence, you would only pay the $1,000. It was more than I could easily afford, but it was fair and necessary. I accept your terms." Robert smiled for the first time since I had entered his office. "Excellent. We will start immediately. I am going to draft a very specific demand letter. In it, we will detail every transaction, cite the relevant legal statutes, and give your son a deadline of 5 business days to respond with a concrete proposal for repayment. If he does not respond, or his response is unsatisfactory, we will simultaneously file the civil suit and the criminal complaint." We spent another half-hour reviewing specific details. Robert had me sign a legal services contract and a power of attorney, allowing him to act on my behalf with banking and judicial institutions. He also advised me on additional steps. "Mr. Miller, I need you to do something important. Request a permanent block on that card from the bank and ask them to issue a new one with completely different numbers. Also, change all your banking passwords and set up 2-factor authentication. We cannot allow your son to have access to any other account or financial resource." "I already requested the block the same day I discovered the transactions," I informed him. "Perfect. That shows diligence on your part, which helps the case. Now, a delicate but necessary question. Is there any will or document where your son is listed as a beneficiary or heir?" The question took me by surprise. "Yes, I have a simple will made 10 years ago where Michael inherits everything. This apartment, my savings account, my life insurance." Robert nodded gravely. "I strongly recommend that you modify that will. I'm not saying disinherit him completely if you don't wish to, but at least establish conditions or name alternative beneficiaries. In cases like this, I have seen situations where the son continues to abuse financially, because he knows he will eventually inherit everything anyway." His words hit me hard. I had never considered that perspective. Had Michael calculated that he could steal from me and humiliate me because, in the end, it would all be his anyway when I died? "I'll make the necessary changes," I promised in a firm voice. I left Robert's office at 11:30 the morning, feeling strangely energized. For the first time since I had received that call from the bank, I didn't feel like a helpless victim. I had a plan. I had a professional ally. I had irrefutable evidence. I walked to the nearest bank and did exactly what Robert had suggested. I requested a new card with completely different numbers. I set up all the additional security measures available. I changed my passwords using combinations Michael could never guess. That night, sitting in my kitchen with a bowl of cheap but comforting lentils, I mentally reviewed everything I had accomplished in a single day. The demand letter would reach Michael in the next few days, and then the battle would truly begin. My phone vibrated. Another message from Michael. "Dad, is everything still okay? You haven't answered me. We're flying back on Sunday. We'll talk then." This time, I did respond, but only 2 words. "We'll talk then." He had no idea of the storm that was coming for him. Sunday, March 22nd. dawned gray and cold, typical of a Chicago winter that refused to end. I got up early, as always, made my watery coffee, and sat by the window of my small living room. According to the itinerary I had deduced from the bank transactions, Michael and the Sanders were scheduled to land at O'Hare Airport around 3 inches the afternoon. Robert had sent me a message the night before, confirming that the demand letter was ready and would be delivered by certified mail on Monday morning, directly to Michael's home. But I knew the real moment of truth would come much sooner than that. What Michael completely ignored was that his credit card would be declined at the hotel during the checkout process. Robert and I had calculated exactly how this scene would unfold. The Burj Al Arab, being one of the most exclusive hotels in the world, had strict payment policies. All additional consumption during the stay was charged to a master account that had to be settled at the time of departure, and with my card permanently blocked since last Tuesday, that account would have a considerable outstanding balance. Based on my calculations from the spending pattern I had observed, that balance was probably around $14,000, additional meals not included in the initial reservation, extra spa treatments, minibar, room service, automatic tips. The hotel would not let them leave without settling that debt. At 10 inches the morning Dubai time, which would be 2 p.m., a typical checkout time for luxury hotels, I imagined the scene with almost cinematic clarity. Michael, at the reception, surrounded by Louis Vuitton suitcases, bought with my money, presenting the card with absolute confidence. The clerk running it through the terminal, the awkward pause, the second attempt, the politely concerned expression of the receptionist. "Excuse me, sir, but the card has been declined. Do you have another method of payment?" My phone rang at exactly 10:23 a.m. It was Michael. I watched the screen vibrating on the kitchen table, his name flashing insistently. I let it ring 5 full times before answering. I wanted him to feel that growing anxiety, that first true stab of panic. "Yes?" My voice was neutral, almost bored. "Dad!" "Thank God you answered." Michael's voice was tense, that fast, with that high-pitched tone he always adopted when he was nervous. "Dad, there's a problem with your card. We're at the hotel trying to check out, and the card won't go through. Could the bank have blocked it by mistake? Could you call them and authorize the charges?" I took a slow sip of my coffee before answering. "The card isn't blocked by mistake, Michael." There was a brief, but heavy, silence. "What do you mean?" "It's not a mistake. Dad, I need this fixed now. We have a flight to catch in 5 hours." "What I mean," I replied, with a calm that surprised even me, "is that I personally requested a permanent block on that card last Tuesday, immediately after receiving the bank notification about $35,240 charged without my authorization from Dubai." The silence that followed was absolute. I could hear background noise, voices murmuring in Arabic and English, the clinking of luggage being moved, the characteristic echo of an elegant hotel lobby. But Michael said nothing. I continued, my voice gaining an edge I didn't know I possessed. I also received a very interesting photograph from a swimming pool. A photo where you, your wife, and your beloved in-laws were toasting with champagne, with a particularly memorable message. They deserve a vacation, and you don't. Does that sound familiar, son? Dad, listen, I can explain. His voice had become pleading, desperate. There's nothing to explain, Michael. You used my card without permission to fund a luxury vacation for the Sanders. You spent in 8 days what I save in 3 years of hardship. And then you had the nerve to mock me publicly. Now you face the consequences. Every word came out like a piece of ice. But Dad, we're trapped here. The hotel won't let us leave until we pay $14,000. $14,000! I don't have that money available right now. My credit card limit is only $5,000. What am I supposed to do? The irony was delicious. What are you supposed to do? Figure it out yourself, like the adult you are, because it seems they deserved a luxury vacation. But you deserve this lesson about stealing from your own father. I heard a muffled cry on the other end, then voices in the background, Clearly Mark and Linda asking what was happening. Michael answered them in hushed murmurs, probably trying to hide the true nature of the disaster. Dad, please. He was openly crying now. You can't do this to us. Nicole is here. Her parents are here. This is humiliating. Do you know how ridiculous we look in front of the entire hotel staff? Humiliating? My voice rose for the first time. You want to talk to me about humiliation, Michael? Let me tell you about humiliation. Humiliation is eating stale bread to save $3 on food, while your son spends $2,000 on a single dinner. Humiliation is wearing mended clothes and torn socks, while your son buys $3,000 Gucci bags. Humiliation is working 2 jobs for 4 years to pay for your college, sacrificing my health and my future, so that 30 years later you can rob me and mock me publicly. I didn't want to hurt you, Dad. It was just... Mark and Linda had been talking about going to Dubai for years. Nicole was so excited. I thought I could pay you back slowly, without you noticing. It was a mistake in judgment, but it wasn't malicious. His ability to justify the unjustifiable was astonishing. Not malicious? Then explain the message on the photograph. Explain how those cruel, deliberate words weren't malicious. I was drunk. Linda had been commenting during lunch about how you had never traveled anywhere interesting, how your life was so small and limited. I got angry with her, though I didn't show it. I think I wrote that as a twisted way of, I don't know, Dad, it was stupid, unforgivable. I'm so sorry. The excuses kept coming, each one more pathetic than the last. But what really caught my attention was the accidental admission. Linda had been criticizing my life in front of my own son, and he, instead of defending me, had chosen to turn that criticism into a public insult aimed at me. Your apologies mean nothing now, Michael. On Monday, you will receive a formal demand letter from my lawyer. In it, he details the legal actions I'm taking and your options for repaying the stolen money. I suggest you read it very carefully. Lawyer? Dad? You can't be serious. I'm your son. Are you really going to sue me over this? I am really going to get back every cent you stole from me, whether by voluntary agreement or by court order. The choice is yours. Mark had taken the phone. His voice boomed with that characteristic arrogance he had perfected over decades of business success. Mr. Miller, this is Mark Sanders. I think this situation has gotten out of control. Obviously, there's been a misunderstanding regarding the use of your card. As a gesture of goodwill, and to resolve this unfortunate incident, I am willing to personally cover the pending hotel expenses so we can all return to the States civilly. Then we can sit down as a family and discuss a reasonable solution. The audacity was breathtaking. Mr. Sanders, there is no misunderstanding. My son stole $35,000 from my account and spent it mainly on you. You and your wife are knowing accomplices to that theft, having enjoyed services paid for with fraudulently obtained money. If you want to pay the hotel debt, go ahead. That doesn't change the fact that I demand the full $35,000 back, plus legal interest. You are being completely irrational. Mark's tone had turned cold, threatening. My son-in-law made a minor error in judgment, but taking him to court, turning this into a legal scandal, will only hurt your own son and his professional future. Do you really want to destroy his career and his marriage over this? Mr. Sanders, I replied, with a firmness born from years of contained rage. My son destroyed our relationship when he decided to rob and humiliate me. The consequences of that decision are entirely his. If his career and marriage suffer, it will be the direct result of his own criminal actions. I hung up the phone without waiting for a reply. My hands were trembling slightly, but not from fear or doubt. It was pure adrenaline. For the first time in years, I had defended myself completely. I had set clear boundaries. I had shown I had a spine. The phone started ringing immediately. Michael. Again. I ignored it. He called 6 more times in the next 15 minutes. Then the messages came. Desperate pleas, promises of immediate repayment, assurances that it would never happen again. I read each one with clinical detachment, answering none. At 1 in the afternoon, I received a call from an unknown number with an area code from the Emirates. I hesitated a moment before answering. Mr. David Miller? A female voice with a British accent. I'm calling from the account management department at the Burj Al Arab. My name is Layla Hassan. We have 4 American guests who have indicated you might help resolve a situation with their pending bill. Miss Hassan, I replied courteously. Those guests used my payment information without authorization. I have permanently blocked that card and have no intention of covering any charges related to their stay. I understand, sir. I just wanted to confirm the situation. The guests will remain on our premises until the outstanding balance of $14,300 is resolved. We have contacted the U.S. Embassy to inform them of the situation, as per protocol. Thank you for informing me. The responsibility is entirely theirs. After hanging up, I made myself a simple lunch, canned soup and an apple. As I ate, I reflected on what I had just done. I had left my son stranded in another country, unable to pay his debt, facing the public humiliation he dreaded so much. A small, persistent part of me wondered if I had gone too far. But then, I remembered the photograph. I remembered the cruel message. I remembered all the years of distance and barely disguised contempt. I remembered how he had constantly prioritized the Sanders over his own father. No, I hadn't gone too far. I was just getting started. For the next 48 hours, my phone became an instrument of torture for Michael. The calls came with obsessive regularity. Every half hour on Sunday afternoon, every hour during the night, again every 30 minutes starting Monday morning. I systematically ignored everyone. The messages were an emotional roller coaster. They started with pleading. Dad, please, we need to talk. This is a nightmare. We're sleeping in the hotel lobby. They won't let us leave or access the rooms. Then, they became desperate. They've called the Dubai police. They can arrest us for fraudulent debt. Do you want your son to go to jail in a foreign country? Then they swung to anger. This is abuse of power. You're a bitter old man who can't stand to see his son happy. And finally, they returned to begging. I will pay you back every last cent. I swear on Mom's memory, just help us get out of here. Reading that last message, where he dared to invoke Sarah's name, almost made me respond. But Robert had firmly advised me to maintain absolute silence until after the formal demand letter was delivered. Any premature communication can be interpreted as a willingness to negotiate informally, which weakens our legal position, he had explained. On Monday, March 23rd, at 9 inches the morning, Robert called me, confirming that the courier had attempted to deliver the notice to Michael's home. Naturally, no one answered, because they were all trapped in Dubai. The courier left an attempted delivery notice and would return the next day. Perfect, Robert commented with professional satisfaction. This officially documents our attempt at formal communication. When he finally receives it, he won't be able to claim he was blindsided. That afternoon, I received a call from Nicole. It was the first time she had spoken to me directly since everything exploded. Her voice sounded broken, exhausted. Mr. Miller, it's Nicole. I know you have every right to be furious with Michael, but please, I beg you to consider that I had nothing to do with this decision. Michael told me you had given permission to use the card. I never would have agreed to come if I had known the truth. Her tone sounded genuine, and for a moment, I felt a pang of compassion. Did you really believe that I, with my miserable pension, would have happily given away $35,000 for a luxury vacation for your parents? There was a long pause. Michael told me he had received a special bonus at work. He said he wanted to use part of that money and borrow the rest from you. That you had agreed because you were happy to see him succeeding. I believed him. I'm an idiot. I know. And the message on the photograph? Was that also Michael's idea? Making it seem like I had authorized public ridicule? I didn't see that message until after Michael posted it. When I confronted him, he said it was an inside joke between you two. Something about your shared sense of humor. Mr. Miller, I'm starting to realize that my husband has lied to me about many things. The rage in her voice when she said my husband was palpable. Maybe Nicole really had been another victim of Michael's manipulations. Or maybe she was a consummate actress trying to save her husband's skin. I no longer knew what to believe about anyone connected to my son. Mrs. Miller. I used her married name deliberately. I appreciate you calling me, but my position has not changed. Your husband committed a serious crime. The consequences will follow their established legal course. My parents got an emergency loan to pay the hotel debt, she said quickly, as if that information could change anything. They're charging us 18% annual interest because it's an express loan with no collateral. We'll be in debt for years. Isn't that enough punishment? The punishment is not my responsibility to determine. The natural consequences of bad decisions are also not my problem to solve. Your husband chose this path. Now he must walk it to the end. I hung up, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. Satisfaction, because I was holding my ground. Sadness, because all of this represented the final death of the father-son relationship we once had. On Tuesday the 24th, in the afternoon, Robert informed me that Michael had finally landed in Chicago. The Sanders had gotten the emergency loan, paid the hotel, and taken the first available flight. Now comes the interesting part, Robert commented with an almost cheerful tone. As soon as he gets home, he'll receive our notice, and he'll have to read it without the protective shield of geographic distance. The demand letter Robert had drafted was a masterpiece of legal precision and psychological pressure. It spanned 7 densely detailed pages. It began with a formal heading, formal demand for restitution for misappropriation and fraudulent use of a financial instrument. It then proceeded to list every specific transaction, with date, time, location, and exact amount. Every restaurant, every purchase, every service, all documented with bank reference numbers and authorization codes. It was impossible to deny or minimize the scale of the theft when it was presented with such clinical detail. The third section extensively cited the relevant articles of the Illinois statutes: aggravated fraud, aggravating circumstances for breach of family trust, misappropriation. Each citation included the corresponding penalties: prison sentences of 1 to 6 years, proportional fines, potential professional disqualification. Section 4 detailed the specific demands: full restitution of $35,240, plus legal interest calculated from the date of each transaction, which brought the total to approximately $36,500. It also included legal costs already incurred and projected. The fifth section was the one I enjoyed most when Robert read it to me. It established 2 clearly differentiated options. Option A: the defendant may propose a voluntary restitution plan within 5 business days of receiving this notice. This plan must include a specific payment schedule, real collateral, or bank guarantees, and a notarized commitment to comply. Acceptance of this option will prevent immediate criminal proceedings. Option B: if the defendant does not respond within the established deadline, or if the response is considered unsatisfactory by the plaintiff and his legal representation, we will proceed simultaneously with a civil suit for execution and a criminal complaint filed with the Chicago District Attorney's Office. This action will include a request for a preventive lien on the defendant's assets and bank accounts. The final section was a psychological masterstroke. It included color reproductions of the pool photograph with its cruel message, screenshots of the conversations where Michael promised to use the card only for emergencies, and a detailed analysis of how the spending pattern demonstrated premeditation and deliberate planning of the fraud. On Wednesday, March 25th, at 11 inches the morning, my phone literally exploded with activity. Michael had received the notice. The calls came every 2 minutes. The messages were frantic, incoherent. 6 pages of legal documents. Are you serious? District attorney? A lien on my accounts? Dad, this is insane. I let him vent for 3 hours without responding. I wanted him to feel that absolute helplessness, that feeling of screaming into the void without receiving any answer, exactly as I had felt for years, when my emotional and financial needs were systematically ignored. At 2 in the afternoon, Robert received an email from the lawyer Michael had hastily hired. His name was Fernando Diaz, according to his signature. The message was cordial, but clearly written by someone who knew his client had no solid defense. Esteemed colleague Mr. Evans, I represent Mr. Michael Miller in the reference matter. My client acknowledges there was a serious misunderstanding regarding the use of his father's credit card. He is willing to negotiate reasonable terms of restitution. Could we schedule a meeting to discuss mutually acceptable options? Robert read me the email over the phone, his tone clearly amused. Note the language: misunderstanding instead of theft. Reasonable terms instead of full repayment. This lawyer knows he's playing a losing hand and is trying to minimize damages. What do we reply? I asked. Nothing. Yet, we'll keep them waiting until tomorrow. Let Michael spend another sleepless night wondering what we'll do. Anxiety is our ally right now. That night, for the first time in weeks, I slept soundly. I dreamed of Sarah. In the dream, she held my hand and told me, "You did the right thing, my love." Sometimes true love means setting firm consequences. When I woke up Thursday morning, I felt absolute clarity. There was no turning back. There would be no easy reconciliation. Michael would have to earn every inch of forgiveness, if that day ever came. And honestly, I wasn't sure it ever would. Thursday, March 26th, was the day everything changed definitively. Robert had scheduled a meeting in his office for 4 inches the afternoon with Michael's lawyer, Fernando Diaz. I was to arrive half an hour early to review the strategy and ensure we maintained an absolutely unwavering position. As I got ready that morning, shaving in front of the rusty bathroom mirror, I noticed something strange. My reflection showed a different man than the one I had been just 2 weeks ago. I had lost that defeated expression, that slump in my shoulders that betrayed years of silent resignation. Now my eyes had a hard, determined glint. My back was straight. I looked like someone who had finally reclaimed his dignity. I arrived at Robert's office at 3:30 sharp, and he already had everything prepared on his desk. Copies of the demand letter, complete bank statements, the detailed timeline of events, and a new document I hadn't seen before. "David, before they arrive, I need to show you something," Robert said, pushing the document toward me. "I've been investigating Michael's financial situation through available legal channels. This is public information from business registries and corporate filings." The document revealed that Michael earned a gross annual salary of $45,000 at his consulting firm, after taxes and deductions, approximately $2,800 net per month. He had a mortgage on his condo, valued at $320,000, with monthly payments of $1,200. He also paid $450 a month for a financed Audi A4. According to these numbers, Robert explained, after covering basic expenses and fixed obligations, Michael has a disposable margin of about $600 a month, if we garnish that surplus. It would take almost 5 years to pay back the $36,500 with interest. 5 years. The figure resonated in my head. And what if he gets the money from another source? The Sanders, for example? Robert shook his head. I highly doubt it. A contact of mine in the business sector where the Sanders operate told me Mark and Linda are furious with Michael. The emergency loan they had to get in Dubai was humiliating for them. 18% annual interest on $14,000 means they'll pay about $18,000 total in 3 years. And all because their son-in-law turned out to be an incompetent thief. Those family relationships are completely fractured. I leaned back in the chair, processing this information. Michael had simultaneously destroyed his relationship with me, and with his revered in-laws. The irony was almost poetic. At 3:55, Patricia announced over the intercom that Fernando Diaz and his client had arrived. Robert looked me straight in the eye. "Remember, maintain absolute calm, no matter what Michael says. Show no emotion. We are pure ice." They entered the conference room adjacent to the main office. Fernando Diaz was a man in his 52nds, impeccable gray suit, a worn leather briefcase that betrayed years of experience. Behind him came Michael. I wasn't prepared for the visual impact of seeing my son after everything that had happened. Michael looked like he had aged 10 years in 2 weeks. He had deep dark circles, disheveled hair, his clothes wrinkled as if he had slept in them. His eyes were red and swollen. When he saw me, his face crumpled completely, and he began to sob. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I'm so very sorry. I made the worst mistake of my life. Please, forgive me. Please." He lunged toward me, trying to hug me. I instinctively moved away, keeping my distance. "Sit down, Michael." My voice sounded strangely cold, even to my own ears. Fernando cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Mr. Miller, David, first of all, I want to express that my client is deeply remorseful for his actions. He fully acknowledges that he acted inappropriately and is willing to make amends through a reasonable agreement." Robert spoke before I could respond. "Mr. Diaz, we appreciate that your client acknowledges his criminal actions. However, the term inappropriate severely minimizes what occurred. We are talking about aggravated misappropriation through breach of family trust. It wasn't a minor error. It was a premeditated crime, executed over 8 full days." Fernando opened his briefcase and pulled out a prepared document. "I understand your position. That's why we've prepared a concrete restitution proposal." He slid the paper across the table. "My client offers to return the $35,240 in monthly payments of $500 for 70 months. He also commits to issuing a written public apology and to not contact David during the payment period unless he authorizes it." 70 months, almost 6 years, and without including the legal interest or the legal costs already incurred. I looked at Robert, who gave an almost imperceptible shake of his head. "The proposal is insufficient," Robert declared firmly. "It doesn't include the legal interest, which already amounts to approximately $1,260. It doesn't cover the $3,000 in legal fees my client has committed. And 70 months is an excessively long time frame, which places all the risk of default on my client." Michael intervened, his voice cracking. "Dad, it's all I can offer. My salary doesn't stretch any further. The Dubai loan is already drowning me financially. $500 a month is literally all my disposable income, after paying my mortgage, car, food, basic utilities." "Then you should have thought about those consequences before you robbed me," I responded, with a coldness that surprised even me. "I have a counter-proposal," Robert announced, pulling out his own document. "Full restitution of $36,500 plus 3,000 inches legal costs, totaling $39,500. Monthly payments of $700 for exactly 60 months. If he is late on 2 consecutive payments, the entire remaining balance becomes due immediately, and we will proceed with legal seizure of assets. Additionally, David Miller will be formally removed as a beneficiary from any will, life insurance policy, or bank account where Mr. Michael Miller has designated him. And finally, an express waiver of any future inheritance from Mr. David Miller's estate." The silence that followed was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Michael stared at the document as if he were reading his own death sentence. Fernando frowned, doing quick mental calculations. $700 a month is impossible," Fernando protested. "According to the financial analysis we've done, my client does not have that amount available." "Then he can sell the Audi and buy a cheaper used car," I suggested, without emotion. "That would free up $450 a month. Let him cut back on restaurants, entertainment, travel. Let him live like I've lived for 3 years, with the bare minimum. I'm sure he'll find a way. Dad, that means I'll have no financial security for 5 full years, no savings, no margin for emergencies. Nothing." Michael's voice trembled. "Welcome to my world," I replied. "That's how I've lived since your mother died. No margin, no security, counting every cent. The difference is, I wasn't 38 with a stable job. I was 60 with a miserable pension." Fernando tried a different tactic. "David, I understand your pain and anger, but this counter-proposal essentially disinherits your only son completely. Do you really want to end your family relationship so absolutely?" Before I could answer, Robert intervened, his voice sharp. Mr. Diaz! The family relationship was terminated by your client when he stole from his father and then publicly mocked him. Mr. Miller is simply formalizing legally what his son already destroyed emotionally. Michael broke down crying again, this time with deep sobs that shook his whole body. Dad, I'm begging you, don't do this to me. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but please, give me some chance to earn back your trust someday. If I sign this, I'm admitting I'll never have a relationship with you again. Something inside me fractured seeing my son like this. I remembered the little boy who used to run into my arms when I came home from work, the teenager who asked me for advice about his first girlfriend, the young graduate who cried with happiness while hugging me. All those memories clashed violently with the current image. A grown man who had betrayed me in the cruelest way imaginable. Michael, I said finally, my voice softer, but no less firm. If you truly want any future possibility, then accept the consequences of your actions now. Prove with actions, not words, that you understand the magnitude of what you did. Pay every dollar you stole. Live with the financial restrictions your crime generated. And maybe, just maybe, in 5 years, when you have completely fulfilled your obligation, we can have a conversation about rebuilding something. But the disinheritance? He asked, his voice barely audible. It's permanent, I confirmed, because I need to protect myself from future manipulations. I need to know that you won't ever see me as a financial resource to be exploited again. Fernando and Michael exchanged long glances. I could see the silent debate unfolding between them. Finally, Fernando spoke. We need 24 hours to consider this proposal and consult with the family. You have until tomorrow at 4 p.m., Robert established. If we don't receive an affirmative answer by then, we will file the civil suit and criminal complaint on Monday morning. As they left the office, Michael turned back one last time. His expression was one of absolute devastation for a second. I felt the urge to call him back, to hug him, to tell him everything would be okay. But that impulse died when I remembered the photograph in the pool and the cruel words that accompanied it. Some fractures cannot be repaired. They can only be documented, and you learn to live with the consequences. The 24-hour deadline dragged on with agonizing slowness. That night, I barely touched the dinner I had prepared. White rice with a fried egg. My stomach was in knots. Part of me hoped Michael would accept the terms. Another part, darker and more vengeful, almost wished he would refuse so I could proceed with the full criminal case. At 11 p.m., I received a message from an unknown number. It was Linda, Nicole's mother. Mr. Miller, this is Linda Price. We need to talk urgently about this situation. What you are doing is going to destroy not only Michael, but my daughter too. She is innocent in all of this. Can we meet tomorrow morning? The audacity of that woman was stunning. For years, she had treated me with barely disguised disdain, as if I were an illiterate peasant who had gotten lucky enough to father someone smart enough to climb the social ladder. And now she was asking me for a meeting, as if we had some kind of cordial relationship. I replied briefly, I have nothing to discuss with you, Mrs. Price. This matter will be resolved through appropriate legal channels. The response came immediately. Be reasonable. Michael made a terrible mistake, but you are being excessively cruel. You will ruin his professional future, his marriage, his entire life. What kind of father does that? Those words ignited something in me. I wrote a long response, deleted it 3 times, before finally sending a more controlled version. Mrs. Price, for 4 years, you systematically pulled my son away from me. You turned him into someone who prioritizes luxury and appearances over the basic values of honesty and family respect. You enjoyed a vacation paid for with money stolen from an old man who eats stale bread to survive. Do not talk to me about being cruel when you were active accomplices in humiliating me. This matter is closed. I blocked the number without waiting for a reply. Friday, March 27th, dawned gray and rainy. I got up at 6, unable to pretend I could sleep any longer. I made coffee and sat by the window, watching the drops hit the glass. My mind kept replaying scenes from Michael's life. His first day of school, his college graduation, his wedding, all those moments I had believed were building blocks of a solid father-son relationship. Now I saw them as mirages, illusions I had maintained because I needed to believe my sacrifice had been worth it. At 10 in the morning, Robert called. "David, I just received an email from Fernando Diaz. Michael accepts all proposed terms. He wants to sign the agreement today." I felt a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. Relief, because I would gradually get my money back. Emptiness, because this confirmed the official death of the relationship with my only son. "When can we proceed?" "I've scheduled the signing for 3 p.m. at a notary's office. I need you to come with your ID and your bank account information, where Michael will deposit the monthly payments. We will also bring certified copies of your current will to the notary to proceed with the formal modifications." The rest of the morning, I spent organizing the necessary documents. I found my original will, stored in a manila envelope in the bottom drawer of my dresser. I opened it and read the words written in 2014. "I bequeath all my material assets, properties, and investments to my only son, Michael Miller, trusting that he will honor his mother's memory and take care of our family legacy with responsibility and love." How naive I had been, how blind. The notary's office was located in the Lincoln Park neighborhood, an old building with worn marble stairs and solid wood doors. I arrived 15 minutes early. Robert was already there, reviewing documents with the notary, an older man named Mr. Arthur C. Riley, who inspired absolute professional seriousness. Michael and Fernando arrived at exactly 3. This time, Michael was also accompanied by Nicole. She looked gaunt, her eyes swollen from crying. When she saw me, she tried a weak smile, but only managed to make her lips tremble. Mr. Riley seated us around a large mahogany table. He began by explaining the procedure. "We are going to formalize 2 separate but related legal documents. First, an economic restitution agreement with judicial guarantees. Second, a testamentary modification with specific exclusion of an heir." He proceeded to read the restitution agreement aloud. Every clause was like a nail being hammered into a coffin. The debtor, Michael Miller, agrees to restore the total sum of $39,500 through 60 consecutive monthly payments of $700 each, deposited before the 5th day of each month, into the bank account of the creditor, David Miller. He continued detailing the penalties for default. In case of a default exceeding 30 days on a payment, a default interest of 25% annually will be applied to the pending balance. In case of default on 2 consecutive payments, the entire remaining balance becomes due immediately, and the creditor may proceed with executive seizure of the debtor's movable and immovable property without need for prior judgment. Michael signed each page with a trembling hand. I watched his face and saw a completely broken man. Nicole cried silently in her chair, wiping her tears with a crumpled tissue. Then came the will modification, Mr. Riley read. "I, David Miller, in full possession of my mental faculties, and without any coercion, hereby modify my previous will, explicitly excluding my son, Michael Miller, as a beneficiary or heir to any material goods, property, bank accounts, life insurance policies, or investments that I own at the time of my death." "Dad, are you really going to do this?" Michael's voice came out cracked, almost childlike. Not even anything symbolic? Not Mom's photos? Not her wedding ring? Mr. Riley cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Mr. Miller, son, please allow us to finish the formal procedure." But Michael couldn't hold back anymore. He stood up abruptly, knocking his chair back. "This is absurd. I'm agreeing to pay back every dollar I spent. I'm destroying my financial life for 5 years. Isn't that enough punishment? Do I also have to be completely erased from your life and your legacy?" "Michael, sit down," Fernando ordered, his tone professional but firm. "No. I need my father to understand what he's doing. Mom never would have wanted this. She always said family was sacred, that mistakes are forgiven, that love conquers all." Michael looked at me with absolute desperation. Where is that love now, Dad? Did you kill it, along with any positive memory you have of me? His words hit me hard, but before I could answer, Nicole spoke for the first time since we had entered. Mr. Miller, I loved my mother-in-law, Sarah, even though I barely knew her before she passed. Michael told me all about her kindness, her generosity, her infinite capacity to forgive. Do you really believe she would approve of what you're doing now? I felt rage bubbling in my chest. Do not dare to invoke Sarah's name to justify anything. If she were alive, Michael never would have done this, because she would have been the moral anchor he needed. But she isn't here. She's dead. And when she died, Michael barely came to say goodbye, because he was too busy impressing the Sanders. So don't talk to me about what Sarah would want. The silence that followed was crushing. Mr. Riley finally spoke, his voice soft. Gentlemen, I understand there are very strong emotions here, but I need you to calm down so we can complete this legal process properly. Michael slowly sat back down. Tears streamed freely down his face, but he made no sound. He seemed to have completely given up. Mr. Riley continued. Regarding personal possessions with sentimental value, like photographs or family jewelry, does Mr. David Miller wish to make any specification? I looked at Michael. I thought about Sarah's wedding ring, the photo albums of our life together, the love letters she had written me when we were dating. All those things had no monetary value, but they were emotionally priceless. Sarah's photographs and personal items will be donated to the Chicago History Museum after my death, I declared. I prefer they be preserved by an institution that values them historically, rather than being handed over to someone who showed so little respect for her memory. Michael made a strangled sound, something between a sob and a groan. Nicole hugged him as he collapsed against her shoulder. I signed the testamentary document with a steady hand. Mr. Riley applied the official notary seals, making everything legally binding and irreversible without a new, full notary process. The procedure is complete, Mr. Riley announced. Both parties will receive certified copies of these documents within 5 business days. We stood up to leave. At the door of the notary's office, Michael caught up to me and grabbed my arm. Dad, please, tell me there's some possibility that someday we can fix this. Tell me that if I comply with this agreement perfectly for 5 years, if I prove that I've changed, if I become the son I should have always been, tell me there will be a chance for us. I looked him directly in the eyes. I saw the child I had raised. I saw the man who had betrayed me. I saw the unbridgeable chasm between who he was and who he became. Michael, I said finally, the only thing I can tell you is this. Fulfill your obligation, pay every dollar you owe, live with the consequences of your decisions. And after 5 years, if you still want to try to talk to me, send me a letter. I promised nothing more than to read it. I pulled my arm from his grip and walked out, without looking back. The first payments arrived on time. On April 5th, the first deposit of $700 appeared in my bank account. I checked it 3 times, almost unable to believe it was really happening. $700. It was more money than I had seen in a single deposit in years, excluding my monthly pension. With that first payment, I did something I hadn't done in 3 years. I went to the grocery store and bought real food, fresh meat instead of cheap cold cuts, fruit that wasn't on clearance, freshly baked bread instead of the discounted day-old loaves. When I got home and put the groceries away, I sat in the kitchen, looking at the full refrigerator, and I cried, not from sadness, but from a relief so deep it hurt physically. On May 5th, the second payment arrived. After the third, on June 5th, I began to believe Michael would actually fulfill the entire agreement. Robert called me occasionally to verify that everything was legally in order. He's complying impeccably, he would comment with professional approval. Not a day late. That's unusual in family restitution cases. Most eventually start to default. During those first few months, Michael tried to contact me several times, despite the no-contact clause. Text messages that I deleted without reading. Calls that I automatically rejected. Once, I saw him at the neighborhood supermarket, buying generic brands just like I used to. Our eyes met briefly across the canned goods aisle. He opened his mouth as if to say something, but I just turned around and left the store, leaving my cart halfway. In July, I received a certified letter from a different law firm. For a moment, I feared Michael was trying some legal maneuver to nullify the agreement, but when I opened it, I discovered it was a divorce notice. Nicole Sanders Price had filed for marital separation, alleging irreconcilable breakdown of the marriage and fundamental loss of trust. The letter included a handwritten note from Nicole, addressed to me. Mr. Miller, I thought I should inform you personally. I cannot stay married to someone capable of what Michael did. The last few months have been unbearable. Every payment he makes to you means we live on the edge of poverty. I've sold my car, my jewelry, everything of value. I had to cover basic expenses. My parents refused to help us after the humiliation in Dubai. Michael is now working 2 jobs, coming home at midnight, exhausted and defeated. I no longer recognize the man I married. Perhaps you feel satisfaction reading this. Perhaps you think it's justice. I just wanted you to know. Your revenge was complete. I read that note 5 times. I expected to feel triumph, validation, satisfaction that Michael was experiencing the full consequences of his actions. But what I felt was a cold emptiness. There was no victory in this, only mutual destruction. In August, the 5th payment arrived 2 days late. I panicked immediately. Was Michael starting to default? I called Robert, who checked quickly. The delay was due to weekend bank processing. The payment was made on the 5th as agreed, but it appeared in your account on the 7th. No technical default. That incident made me realize something disturbing. My entire life now revolved around those monthly payments. I waited for the 5th of the month with anxiety. I checked my bank account obsessively. I mentally calculated how many months were left, how much money Michael still owed me, how much longer this forced connection between us would last. In September, an old colleague from the factory named Thomas Hill organized a retirees get-together. I hadn't attended social events in years due to lack of money, but now, with Michael's payments covering basic expenses and my pension freed up for other uses, I could afford to go out occasionally. We went to a modest bar near the old industrial neighborhood. 8 old men, sharing a beer.